to pull the microphone. Thank you. A pleasant good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Unami Dube. I am the team leader at the AUDA NEPAD, responsible for skills and employability. It is my singular honor and pleasure to moderate this session, and especially, Madam Vice President, thank you for joining us this afternoon. We're very grateful for your presence. We've been given 45 minutes. Please start the clock. I'm just not sure if you are using GMT or Zulu time or Australian time, but we'll get there anyway. Thank you. So today I'm supported by two rapporteurs who will come at the end. Please listen in carefully because this promises to be a very exciting engagement. But the honor really is to have as the panelists distinguished guests or distinguished panelists from Ghana, and the Honorable Minister will join us shortly. But we also have with us today the Director of Cabinet from the Democratic Republic of Congo, Mr. Koto Ealong Femen. Yes. He will come in and speak to us later on. Professor Mona Larossi, welcome. She is the director for the Institute of Francophone for Education and Training, and we'll hear a little bit more from her later. Mr. Esa Kavin, welcome. Thank you so much. He's the director and principal of Riviera, the former director of Finnish National Agency for Education, and he will speak to us about the experiences from Finland. Then we will have Ms. Martha Muhwezi, Executive Director, Forum for African Women Educationalists. This is FAWE, and they will be focusing on gender in TVET, TVSD, sharing some good practices. But to get us started, we are here on the island of Mauritius. And what I saw, Mr. Yamal Matabdul, thank you. It's promising to be a very exciting presentation. Please, would you take the floor and trigger some thought for us? Remember what the minister said today. We need to think. Help us to think. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. So a very good afternoon to you. It's a marathon that's happening to be a sprint, so we will do the best that we can. The reality today is that many places around the world, we still see that TVET is operating from a low base. In certain countries, that's fully justified because of the need of the hour, because of the need of the economy. In other places, this can be quite restrictive. On the other hand, 3 or 4 years of front-loaded education in a university oftentimes reveals obsolete skill sets by the time students come out. We have a paradox. There are 3 forces that are actually that are accentuating this. Number 1, intrinsic forces. Any member states, many governments around here are actually looking at the next developmental journey. What is it we need to do in terms of skill set building to craft the future economy? Number 2, there are outside-in forces, the future of work, Industry 4.0, there are automation, there is a number of different forces that's forcing us to become more competitive, more resilient as we go forward. Exogenous shocks like the COVID pandemic, being mentioned again over the so many different days of this conference, are actually coming in and changing a lot of the data. So 3 forces that are pushing us to think of TVSD of the future. We've been talking about think tanks. We've been talking about the need to think. What's the future TVSD? We're going to try and go through some of this in terms of 5 Ps as a framework. But before I do so, this is the campus of Pamplemousse. It's 15 minutes away from here. I know there are quite a few interested parties to go visit. We look at what higher technical education is doing in Mauritius. 5 Ps: policy, program, projects, people, process. irrespective of where we stand in that paradox, we realize that a holistic framework is really important where policies are talking to one another for a, in this case, a pan-Mauritian skill strategy or a pan-African skill strategy. As we look at that, we've been hearing over the past 2 days that in certain countries, TVET is split across many departments, across many ministries, formal, non-formal, informal, etc. So we realize that there's a need for clear lines, clear delineating lines through complementary institutions, whose purpose is what and intended what for. So as we look into this, we realize that to get the base right, we need to overcome the thin and weak conception that TVSD still has in many places around the world. Everybody knows this. All experts, it's sharing. What do we do about this? In Mauritius, there are 3 axes that we've adopted. And I'm going to be very careful because the Vice Prime Minister is here, along with the whole management of the ministry. So, reform, reprogramming, rebranding. From a reform point of view, obviously legislation has played an important role. We've had, 2 years ago, we had the Skills Development Authority that came forward, where we realized that skills, being the new common currency, don't necessarily fit in very linearly in terms of as qualifications and credentials do in the National Qualifications Framework. Sometimes it's in between. How do we actually grapple around this? There is the Honorable Minister mentioned earlier today, the Institute of Technical Education and Technology, because high quality technical education is really required for the future economy. There are a number of different policies that are coming up. We've talked about the O-levels, the new O-levels in terms of the technological track, because intrapreneurship and really thinking ahead of time is really important to realize the type of skill sets that we want afterwards. So we need to start early. Even from that point of view, career exploration, career counseling has to come at a much earlier rate in terms of paving the way for employers to get in and also offer that whole panoply of programs, of courses, that could be interesting to students. Failure to do this lands only in certain choices. I either become an accountant, I become a doctor, I become a lawyer. But if we are to be aware of all the different areas, nursing, specialized nursing, cybersecurity, interactive digital media, architecture, engineering, maritime, ports authority, aviation, so many different aspects that can be developed through technical education. At the background of this, one of the really bold and decisive steps that Mauritius has taken is to change the 2-point system into a 4-point system. The vocational university have given way over time to vocational, technical, higher technical university. So from that point of view, we realize that there are a number of different policies that have come to help this. Diploma to degree. For instance, here, when students have a diploma acquired through TVET, through technical education at level 6 of the National Qualifications Framework, they should have no barriers to exceed to level 7, a bachelor top-up. So this establishes a clear connect in a manifested form of TVSD to higher education. Similarly, we've talked about the free tertiary education scheme in Mauritius. Every student has the opportunity to articulate through the first undergraduate cycle, and that's also applicable to TVET, for free of charge with the 10 public institutions. Again, this is strong signal and commitment that this is what we need for the economy. The SC Technological we already mentioned. Alongside of this, in terms of the 4 different rungs that have been created, we also see that we need to stay away from normative structures in TVET that have always perpetrated. An apprenticeship has to be 4 days in industry, 1 day in school. But if we look at cybersecurity, a diploma in cybersecurity, and we look at a diploma in graphic design, maybe the cybersecurity may need more knowledge to practice. So we need to have an agile mindset to realize that we need to have a slider scale of knowledge to practice, especially for the future economy. So that's again a reconceptualization of what TVET of TVSD for the future is. Reprogramming has this ability to look at what's the best way to service different economic activities based on which rungs of the ladder of education. For instance, an engineer that comes out, usually trained at the university, in a lull period may find an immediate job as a senior technician. Employers are happy because I'm getting higher order skill sets at a lower pay. But soon to realize that this person was not actually trained to become a senior technician. Just because I have higher does not mean I am fit for purpose for what I need to do. So this ability, again, channeling around the reprogramming, is an important feature of the reform agenda that has been taking place in Mauritius. A new policy has also been around. There's been a lot of changes in Mauritius, again, preparing for the future economy. So examples are many, I've just taken a few. Students who complete the O-levels have to secure 5 credits to go on to the A-levels academic, the A-level system. But again, the students who do not have the chance either to resit or to go through technical education, higher technical education, and eventually map out to university. So there are no blockages. This was mentioned by the minister this morning. But this is proof that this is actually happening. We're having many students join higher technical education that are opting preferentially for this rather than going. There are students even with the 5 credits or 6 credits that are actually now turning towards technical education. Rebranding is an important aspect as well. But there's an important lesson here, I think, from Mauritius that can be shared. Rebranding does not mean product line extension. Let's do it differently. What we've realized has worked here because the Polytechnics, for instance, as an example, has increased enrollment by 3,000% over the last 4 years. And that's because there is a genuine way to look at it at a new concept. This is not just extending what used to happen. New credentials, new specializations, modern infrastructure, high-tech equipment, higher internet connectivity and speeds, make it that this is not the one that we used to think of in the minds of students, but certainly in the minds of parents. Today we're looking at a new form of education, not just slightly revised. And I think that has made a big, big impact. And this is something that we could share and talk a little bit more about. So this whole soft power and modernization is really important. We talked about the skills mismatch for the past 2 days. But the true complexity of this issue is that it's not just a skills mismatch. It can be a job mismatch. It can be an orientation mismatch. It can be an intergenerational mismatch. Some students have different aspirations. We're looking at Gen Y. They have different aspirations of what it is they want to do. Now, if they can follow a certificate in Internet of Things or a diploma in big data, yet that's taking place at a technical education institution, they realize that this is completely different. So, and the best form of preparation for those fields lies in those institutions because of their applied model of learning. The archetype of TVET itself has for too long been too rigid. Functionality takes precedence over aesthetic and design. How do we want it to be attractive when we're focusing only on the functionality? A plumber or a technician were mentioned earlier today. The plumber and technician of tomorrow is different from that of yesterday. The amount of soft skills is really important. Just having a functional plumber does not do it anymore because I need negotiation skills, I need business development skills, I need the art of communication. So to sell my craft, I need to even get there. I need to be visible. So how much are we working on that attractiveness factor? That's an important consideration. We are looking at targeted interventions as well. We've all gone through the through the COVID pandemic. In Mauritius, the Human Resource Development Council has been coming up with a number of different schemes. Back to work moms, youth unemployment, whether it is structural unemployment, whether it is national training and reskilling programs, with short bullet courses to reskill and upskill. Too often we confound skilling, reskilling, and upskilling in one package. The language is entirely different. The way to prepare is entirely different. The portability of skill sets is an important consideration. During the pandemic, one area where we experimented here in Mauritius was the mesh of different skill sets, interdisciplinarity. Healthcare, hospitality, in preparing for luxury vacations, luxury tourists to come here for longer periods of time. Mauritius was a safe place. Tourists came, there was a different visa structure developed for this. So again, how do we bring the healthcare and the hospitality together for luxury types of settings? That's an area for interdisciplinarity by mixing and matching that. The need for TVET, being born from bottom-up innovation, has always been that we need to solve problems, real problems. That's why TVET has to be culturally close to society. We cannot have a top-down approach. It's not going to work. So again, by having a lot of the students coming on board, participating in the internships, that mesh of private sector-led engagement being working together with the students for a new form of work-integrated learning, for a new form of student contract, a new form of contractual arrangement between employers and training institutions. All this is required today. We have at the level of polytechnics, students who go for part-time internships, full-time students go for part-time internships. They end up getting full-time jobs, and we need to turn them into part-time study, even before finishing. If you're not agile, how can we do that? So again, the needs of the economy are such that they dictate what are the forms that we need to use. The director of the MQA is here. The RPL and harmonization. We talked about Education Hub this morning. This imperative for TVET, also TVET, along with higher education, to be courses where students from Africa can come in. The whole talk about yesterday of comparative advantage. Does everyone need to do everything? Or we realize who has the most expertise to be able to do this. And then exchanges take place. So it's the whole system is changing. We realize that even trainers in TVET need to change. Here, we've been experimenting on externships. We take the trainers, we put them back in work. Two things happen. One, technical ability goes up. But the second thing, which is them getting back into industry after many years, reveals what are the true pressures, what are the competing deadlines. And that ethos, that softer power comes back to school in terms of mentoring, in terms of guidance, etc. So all in all, we see that local problems need also local solutions. I think we've heard that quite loud and clear this morning as well. From that point of view, I am reminded of the Meiji, the Meiji Restoration in Japan in 1868, when they used to talk about Western technique, but Japanese spirit. Maybe this is a time for us to think about world techniques from world over, but African spirit, Mauritian spirit. Until it is not culturally close, how can we think that we're going to get a sustainable solution? How do we think the pathways are actually going to work? On paper it does, and here we've experimented with this, and to a large degree, we've seen students coming out of vocational with a certificate, coming into diplomas, then coming onto universities. So the pathways are actually working. And this is, I think, a lot of lessons learned that we can share. The attractiveness factor is a key element. We've talked about this. We've got some examples of some of the simulation spaces that we're using at the level of polytechnics. This is the IIT lab, the architecture lab, specialist kitchens, nursing design spaces, peer-to-peer learning being one of the new forms to actually learn even within this. I've left this here. This explains a little bit more the pathways. You will get a copy of this. We won't have time to go through it. But again, it shows, I think, a lot of the sophistication that's taking place and the multiple entry, exit, re-entry pathways that are actually taking place in Mauritius. We are constantly available to discuss about this. And I think that as much as we can share, as much as we can collaborate as an African narrative, the better it's going to be. We dream of that day, and we hope it's going to happen very, very soon. We'll finish with our African students on campus. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that inspiration. I felt like maybe I should send my son here for some of that training. Thank you. I just want to check in the room, do we have Miss Lina Maria da Silva? No, if not, then this is a learning journey that we have today to really try to understand the holistic approaches that are being put in place to improve the learning pathways that can translate learning to employability. And so we'll continue in our journey today to really dive deeper into some of the experiences, and we have the esteemed panelists here that will share with us some of the initiatives that they have been driving in their countries. So I would like to begin with you, sir, if I may, and just check, colleagues, I understand the French translation. Is it now working properly? Somewhat. All right. Let us persevere. If I may need help then if it's not as clear, because I cannot afford to get it wrong. But let us please, let me invite Mr. Ferman, the Director of Cabinet, Democratic Republic of Congo, and he has a presentation for us that will direct us to try and understand how in Congo you have been rethinking pedagogy and teaching in TVSD to match with national and regional needs. Please, sir, if you could just take us 3-5 minutes to share with us what you are doing in your country.
Merci beaucoup, Madame, pour la parole. Je suis M. Firmin Koto, je suis directeur de cabinet de Madame la ministre chargée de la formation professionnelle et métier, Madame Kabenga Kipulu. Je voudrais, avant toute chose, avant de présenter le PowerPoint, je ne sais pas si les amis sont prêts, de faire une brève introduction sur 3 éléments majeurs qui pourraient nous permettre de mieux comprendre quels sont les défis que le ministère de la formation professionnelle et métier rencontre à l'heure actuelle. Le premier défi, c'est lié au mythe des diplômes universitaires. Dans notre pays, à l'indépendance, en 1960, on avait à peine 2 ou 3 universitaires, 2 ou 3. Et pour occuper certaines fonctions dans nos pays, on a constaté que les gens devaient passer par l'université, surtout vers les années 1965, où les chefs de l'État de l'époque ne prenaient que des universitaires, comme ministres, comme présidents délégués généraux et comme autres cadres au niveau de l'administration. Et ça a créé un engouement de la jeunesse vis-à-vis des études universitaires. Et même l'enseignement secondaire, l'enseignement de base, était orienté vers la poursuite des études au niveau universitaire et que la formation professionnelle était considérée comme étant un type de formation qui était réservé aux gens qui avaient échoué aux études classiques. Et là, ça a créé une faiblesse dans cette filière de formation. Ça, c'est le premier élément. Le deuxième élément est que même s'il y avait un engouement au niveau de la formation universitaire, les opérateurs du secteur privé, les investisseurs, avaient cru qu'il y avait une inadéquation entre les produits des universités et les produits des écoles techniques, parce qu'il y avait des écoles techniques à l'époque, et le besoin des industries en termes de développement, en termes de productivité, en termes de compétitivité. De telle sorte que, à cette époque-là, on avait déjà commencé à remettre en question la qualité de l'enseignement secondaire orienté vers l'université, et même l'enseignement universitaire lui-même. Le troisième élément, c'est situé au niveau de l'encadrement. Nous avons constaté que vers les années 1970 et 1973, il y avait une première crise du pétrole, les 2 crises du pétrole, mais qui n'avaient pas tellement d'impact au niveau du chômage dans le pays. C'est vers les années 1990, 91, 93 qu'il y a eu un phénomène de pillage. On a pillé suite à des revendications d'ordre politique et le tissu économique et industriel était pratiquement détruit. Et les gens ont été mis au chômage, universitaire ou pas. C'est à cette époque-là qu'a commencé à se développer un esprit de débrouillardise où les gens se sont lancés dans la formation professionnelle, mais c'était une formation dans l'État. Il n'y avait pas de structure appropriée pour accueillir les jeunes gens qui étaient là pour apprendre les métiers maçonnerie, mécanique générale, coupe et couture, etc. Donc, ils étaient là, sur le terrain, en train de se débrouiller. Voilà les 3 défis. Donc, pour le ministère de la formation professionnelle et métiers, le premier défi, c'est de participer au relèvement de l'économie nationale à travers la mise sur le marché d'une main-d'œuvre qualifiée et compétitive au niveau de la région, au niveau de la sous-région, de la SADC et au niveau de la région. Et le deuxième défi à relever, c'était un défi qui tournait autour de mise en place de cadres de formation en termes de bâtiments, en termes d'écoles, d'établissements, qui pouvaient permettre un enseignement approprié aux gens qui voulaient bien aller dans ces filières-là de couture, mécanique, etc., pour permettre un véritable suivi à ce niveau. Donc voilà un ensemble de problèmes qui a fait que le gouvernement actuel a pris la décision en 2014 de créer un ministère à part entière. À l'époque, c'était un ministère qui était fusionné à l'enseignement primaire, secondaire et technique. Mais maintenant, on a séparé les 2 filières. On a l'enseignement de base d'un côté et l'enseignement professionnel de l'autre côté. Et à partir d'un certain moment, nous avons mis en place, développé certaines actions sur le terrain. Vous comprenez que c'est un jeune ministère. Il se pose un certain nombre de problèmes, pratiquement à tous les niveaux. Problème du cadre institutionnel, par exemple en termes de loi, le problème de moyens de financement et d'autres. Donc là, nous avons déjà commencé à mener des actions sur le terrain et dans le PowerPoint que nous avons préparé, il y a un certain nombre d'éléments quantitatifs que nous voulons bien discuter avec vous pour essayer de voir comment nous avons évolué de 1916, je crois qu'on a fait la dernière évaluation jusqu'en 2021, avec une prospective de 2023 à 2025. Et ces évaluations vont porter sur 4 chapitres, 4 points. Le premier, c'est le problème de l'accès et de l'équité. Le deuxième, c'est le problème de la qualité et de pertinence. Le troisième se situe au niveau de la gouvernance. Et le quatrième, au niveau de la perspective pour la période 2023-2025. Concernant l'accès et l'équité, il s'agit essentiellement pour nous de voir comment ont évolué les centres de formation professionnelle, de voir comment il y a eu évolution des effectifs des apprenants, et l'évolution effective des formateurs et puis les types de formation. Concernant les centres de formation professionnelle, comme je l'ai dit tout à l'heure, il y a un écart important entre les centres de formation proposés par l'État, ou les centres de formation publics, presque inexistants, et les centres de formation privés qui arrachent pratiquement la grande majorité de la jeunesse qui veut bien apprendre un métier. Et là, vous voyez bien sur le graphique qu'en 1916, pour les centres publics, on n'avait que 65, et en 2021, on a atteint 124. Mais si vous regardez du côté des centres privés, en 2016 déjà, on avait 1100 centres de formation et en 2021, on est passé à 7071. Cela s'explique simplement par le fait qu'à un certain moment, la population ayant constaté qu'il y a eu une démission de l'État par rapport à la rencontre des besoins essentiels de la population, ils ont développé ce que nous avons appelé une dynamique communautaire. La dynamique communautaire, c'est une activité qui tourne autour des ONG qui avaient pris en charge pratiquement tous les aspects de la vie d'une communauté, soins de santé, éducation, formation professionnelle, etc. Et là, c'était plus développé dans la partie est du pays, où on a vu pulluler beaucoup d'ONG qui se sont occupées de la formation professionnelle dans le secteur privé. Et le total, comme vous voyez, c'est va de 1165 à 7195. Et là, on sent le poids du privé par rapport au public. Et en termes de moyenne, on a atteint 49%. Et là, c'est un graphique qui montre le trend, comment est-ce qu'on a évolué de 2016 à 2021, avec un petit ralentissement entre 2020 et 2021. Alors, la deuxième tendance qu'on voudrait bien vous montrer, vous présenter, c'est la tendance du nombre d'apprenants. C'est comme je l'ai dit, avec la crise, la jeunesse s'est jetée à l'eau pour voir quel est le métier qu'ils pouvaient apprendre pour faire face à la cherté de la vie. Et bon, il y a ceux qui apprenaient pour aller comme employés, et il y a d'autres qui s'étaient formés pour aller vers l'auto-emploi, c'est-à-dire qui avaient complété leur formation technique par une formation en entrepreneuriat. Et là, c'est pratiquement des chiffres agrégés, vous trouvez les deux catégories dans les mêmes tendances. Mais ce qui est intéressant pour nous, c'est de montrer que le nombre d'apprenants dans les secteurs publics et privés, même là aussi, il y a une grande différence. Vous voyez bien qu'en 2016, le nombre d'apprenants, c'était 2091, alors qu'en 2021, c'est 47 032. Ça, c'est le secteur public. Et quand vous allez vers le secteur privé, c'est une explosion où nous passons de 63 000 à 150 993. Donc, avec le travail qu'on est en train de faire au niveau du cabinet de la ministre Kipoulou, il y a un grand travail de sensibilisation au niveau de la jeunesse pour leur montrer qu'aller vers les études professionnelles, ce n'est pas un échec, c'est plutôt un goût personnel, des capacités innées, une fois découvertes, qui pouvaient être exploitées au profit du développement de notre économie. Et là, ces discours commençaient à porter des fruits et la jeunesse se sent de plus en plus attirée par ce secteur-là pour essayer de résoudre des problèmes au quotidien. Et là, nous avons également présenté le pourcentage des filles pour tenir compte du gender dans la formation professionnelle. On voit qu'il y avait 32% des filles en 2016 comme apprenants, qui est passé à 45, en 37, et puis en 2021, on a atteint 43%, ce qui n'est pas négligeable du tout. Et il y a les graphiques qui montrent, si vous voyez en termes comparatifs, bien sûr, il y a toujours la partie des hommes qui occupe une proportion plus élevée, mais si vous voyez de 2016 à 2021, l'écart est important au niveau des apprenants en termes de gender. Alors, le troisième élément qu'on voudrait bien vous présenter, c'est au niveau des formateurs du secteur public et privé. Et ça pose plutôt un problème. Là, on a pris, disons, des statistiques qui ne tiennent pas compte de la qualité, ce qui est difficile hein, lorsqu'on présente des chiffres comme ça. L'aspect qualitatif des formateurs n'apparaît pas. Mais dans nos discussions avec les secteurs privés, ils ont soulevé une question que pour parler de formateurs, il faudra passer par une première étape, qui est celle de la formation des formateurs. Il faudrait que ces formateurs soient d'abord bien formés eux-mêmes avant d'assurer la formation des jeunes qui se livrent au niveau des activités professionnelles et des métiers. Et là, on voit bien, c'est pratiquement la même structure qui répond à la structure de l'économie, mais l'écart au niveau des formateurs semble un peu plus atténué par rapport au nombre des apprenants dans le secteur. Bon là, le graphique là est une redondance, c'était une erreur là. Alors, par rapport au type de formation professionnelle organisée, l'approche que nous utilisons, c'est la formation initiale professionnalisante. Parce qu'en RDC, il y a une structure qui s'occupe également de la formation professionnelle. Mais là, il s'agit pratiquement d'une activité de mise à niveau par rapport à la technologie, par rapport aux nouvelles techniques. C'est l'Institut national de préparation professionnelle qui ne prennent pas les apprenants à l'état nul pour les amener à un niveau de professionnalisation. C'est ce que nous faisons. Nous prenons des jeunes gens qui ne connaissent rien, qui n'ont rien à apporter à la communauté, et nous les amenons à apprendre un métier, à apprendre une profession pour les mettre d'abord pour eux-mêmes, avoir un revenu, pour survivre, ce qui nous permette de combattre directement la pauvreté, parce que ça, c'est également une autre dimension dont nous tenons compte au niveau de notre ministère, mettre en place une stratégie de création d'emplois et de promotion d'auto-emploi, de manière à ce qu'à partir du revenu obtenu par des gens qui se sont professionnalisés, que l'indice de pauvreté puisse connaître une chute. Et depuis un certain temps, effectivement, on est passé vers les années 90, le taux de pauvreté avoisinait les 85-90%. À l'heure actuelle, le taux de pauvreté tourne autour de 60-63%. C'est là grâce à des activités parallèles de formation professionnelle qui permettent aux gens d'obtenir un revenu capable de faire quelque chose dans la vie. Et là, nous avons des filières qui sont prisées par la population congolaise. Il y a en tête la coupe et couture. Les Congolais sont vraiment ont un attrait, une attirance particulière pour la coupe et couture. Là, vous avez 18% de tailleurs, comme nous appelons chez nous. Vous avez la menuiserie qui occupe 13%. La mécanique automobile, là également, c'est quelque chose de formidable, où il y a un bassin important de main-d'œuvre, particulièrement à Kinshasa. Et maintenant, nous sommes en train de mener une enquête légère pour essayer d'élargir notre perception de ces bassins de main-d'œuvre, de telle sorte qu'on puisse les encadrer et les amener à un niveau de professionnalisme un peu plus élevé. Il y a le secrétariat informatique, il y a la maçonnerie, il y a l'agriculture générale, la construction, la transformation des produits agricoles, l'ajustage et soudure, la mécanique générale, l'esthétique, l'hôtellerie, restauration ménagère et agro-vétérinaire. Je voudrais insister sur l'aspect ajustage et soudure. Ça, c'est un aspect fondamental parce que ce que nous avons constaté à l'heure actuelle, c'est que le niveau d'ajustage et soudure étant faible dans le pays, on est en train d'importer cette main-d'œuvre pratiquement des pays avoisinants, Zambie, Zimbabwe et autres, pour des activités qui se déroulent au sein de la RDC. Et là, les patronats congolais trouvent cette situation inadmissible. C'est pour cette raison qu'on est en pourparlers avec eux sur certaines filières qu'on doit rapidement améliorer. Bon, pour les autres points, on est en train de me braquer ici. Je suis obligé d'aller un peu plus vite. Il y a la problématique de la qualité et pertinence. Là, l'élément essentiel, c'est l'élaboration des programmes. Et pour que ces programmes soient pertinents, nous avons jugé utile de discuter avec les hommes, les professionnels des métiers, qui nous aident à mettre en place un curricula acceptable au niveau du processus de formation, de l'évaluation également. Au niveau de la gouvernance, le pays étant grand, nous avons jugé utile, par rapport aux activités de surveillance, de décentraliser. Une partie de contrôle se fait au niveau de l'administration centrale et une autre partie au niveau des provinces pour essayer de mener un travail de surveillance de proximité. Et puis, il y a l'encadrement des centres de formation. Alors là, les problèmes de financement, comme vous pouvez vous y attendre, notre secteur souffre d'un manque de financement au niveau du budget de l'État. Si vous regardez, vous allez voir, au niveau des prévisions, les lignes sont pratiquement entières, mais au niveau de l'exécution, c'est parsemé. Donc là, nous avons vraiment des taux extrêmement faibles de financement venant de l'État, ce qui fait qu'on est obligé de passer par les partenaires techniques et financiers qui effectivement nous aident, avec qui nous avons des discussions franches et qui nous apportent des subsides nécessaires pour aller de l'avant. L'autofinancement, ça concerne particulièrement le secteur privé. Et là, en termes de perspective, nous avons des éléments d'accès en termes de construction d'écoles, etc. Nous avons également le problème au niveau de la gouvernance. Là, j'aimerais bien insister sur la mise en place du cadre national de qualification et de certification. Nous avons déjà un task force qui existe au pays, au ministère, en cette matière. Et nous y allons. Le gouvernement est déjà sensibilisé pour cette activité. Et bientôt, il y aura des mesures au niveau national qui nous permettra d'être au diapason au niveau de la SADC, donc au niveau sous-régional, et pourquoi pas au niveau de l'Afrique en général. Et puis, il y a le problème de l'employabilité, de l'insertion professionnelle. Et là, vous avez les activités menées par Madame la ministre, parce qu'il faudra bien que vous la voyez aussi, sur les poses des premières pierres à travers le pays. Et là, sur l'axe qualité, elle est en train de distribuer les feuilles d'examen national de formation professionnelle, parce que depuis qu'elle est là, c'est le seul ministre à pouvoir mettre en place l'aspect de diplôme lié à la formation professionnelle, et la jeunesse est bien attirée à obtenir un diplôme pour avoir une qualification officielle reconnue par l'État. Et là, en bas, vous voyez la gouvernance, et là, en train de... Ça, c'est un centre de formation professionnelle publique consacré à l'informatique de bureau. Et là, il distribue les postes informatiques. Et de l'autre côté, vous avez les kits matériels de professionnalisation où il y a les machines à coudre dans un centre féminin. Et ça, il n'y a que les dames pour apprendre la couture et aller vers l'auto-emploi. Voilà ce que je pouvais dire concernant la RDC. Merci.
Thank you very much for that very rich presentation. I really struggled, colleagues, to stop my colleague, but you can tell that there is a lot of change that is taking place in the Congo. We are seeing the growing numbers of young people going into the vocational training in response to the growing economy. Okay. So we're grateful for that, and I was particularly pleased to see that there are more women as well that are entering into the training. And so we continue on our learning journey, and I would like to transition to Finland and invite my colleague. Did I get that? No, I'm sorry. I'm coming over to you, Professor Amona, and we are asking you the same question. Bring to us, how have you addressed this in Europe? At least, no, I'm with you, because you are dealing with us here. You said to me that you work in several countries here on the continent. So you are observing some of these changes firsthand. We've heard from Mauritius how they're future thinking. There's no translation?
No.
Oswald, please, may you help me?
Okay.
Okay.
C'est bon.
Just a second. Hélène, are you able to help me? It's okay now?
It's okay now.
We apologize, colleagues. These things happen. We can proceed? Thank you. So, Professor Larossi, you have in-depth experience working in several countries. How are you observing and seeing countries rethinking pedagogy and teaching in TVSD, in particular to match national and regional needs, the changing economies? How are you seeing the member states responding in terms of rethinking pedagogy and teaching in TVSD?
Merci pour la question. Je vais être rapide. Nous travaillons, moi je suis la directrice de l'Institut de la francophonie pour l'éducation et la formation. C'est un institut qui est basé à Dakar. I'm sorry for the English-speaking people. I am working with French-speaking countries, so I have to speak in French, but I can translate a bit after, or I can answer the question after. Donc, en travaillant avec les 12 pays, on travaille sur les 88 pays de la francophonie, et nous avons un programme intitulé Formation et insertion professionnelle des jeunes, FIGE. Dans ce programme-là, nous avons développé une application Insert Jeune. Insert Jeune permet de mesurer l'adéquation formation reçue par les apprentis, besoins de l'entreprise et inversement. Et donc, nous pouvons avoir des statistiques sur quelles sont les compétences qui étaient bonnes, acquises, quelles sont les compétences qui n'ont pas été acquises, et est-ce que l'apprenti a pu intégrer l'entreprise, donc on peut avoir une traçabilité, et on peut également savoir si l'apprenti est devenu un auto-entrepreneur et dans quelle mesure il est devenu. Donc cette application, elle est installée maintenant à peu près dans 12 pays, et certains pays l'ont nationalisée, c'est-à-dire que ce n'est plus une application de l'OIF, mais c'est une application pays. Donc on peut trouver insertjeune.tg pour le Togo, insertjeune.sn pour le Sénégal, et c'est devenu une application nationale et un véritable baromètre. Qu'est-ce qu'elle nous donne, cette application? Mais là, c'est là un peu pour répondre à votre besoin. Déjà, l'application nous donne les besoins des pays. Donc les pays, quels sont les besoins des pays en termes de métiers. Donc nous avons vu par exemple l'RDC couture tailleur, ça aussi c'est au Sénégal, on va retrouver les mêmes métiers parce qu'on est coquin entre les Africains, on aime bien être bien habillés. Il y a d'autres métiers qui arrivent sur le terrain. Ces métiers-là sont réparateurs de téléphone. Et métiers comme aussi les métiers de tri sélectif au niveau de métiers verts et bleus, quel genre de tri je peux faire. Il y a aussi des métiers qui sont liés à la cybersécurité et vous l'avez bien présenté, mais d'un point de vue plus bas, pas au niveau algorithme, détection, etc., mais de point de vue plaidoyer, sécurité de base, virus de base. Donc il y a ce genre de métier qui arrive et de bonne augure parce que ça prépare au nouveau métier. Maintenant, la question qui m'a été posée aussi sur quelle est la nouvelle pédagogie pour le faire. Je vais vous donner une réponse rapide, même chez vous à la maison. Si vous voulez mettre un tableau, accrocher un tableau ou regarder quelque chose, vous allez sur Internet, vous allez trouver la vidéo, vous allez l'arrêter à chaque fois et vous allez faire l'action. Moi, je le fais, les enfants le font et tout le monde le fait. Donc l'apprenti maintenant, qu'on est en train d'apprendre la menuiserie, de base avec la scie. Et lui, il peut regarder sur Internet la scie sauteuse, comment fonctionne, comment faire un tabouret, un tableau, et très rapidement, avec tout ce qu'il faut derrière. Donc c'est quoi le rôle de l'enseignant qui est là et qui ne sait pas comment parler à ce jeune-là qui sait tout, qui a tout sur Internet? Même si le coût de la communication en Afrique reste très, très fort, et moi là je fais un plaidoyer pour que les décideurs qui sont là peuvent baisser un peu les coûts. Mais ce jeune-là trouve sur Internet la vidéo qu'il veut pour la formation qu'il veut. Donc, c'est quoi le rôle de l'enseignant? Et c'est quoi la nouvelle pédagogie? Donc là, je reprends un peu le rôle de l'enseignant qui n'est plus dans tous les métiers. Éducation, mais la formation professionnelle, elle est plus touchée. Ce rôle d'enseignant n'est plus le rôle de détenteur de l'information. Je sais tout. Ce n'est plus ni le Dieu, ni le demi-dieu. C'est fini. Cet enseignant-là, maintenant, c'est un intermédiaire, c'est le coach, c'est le facilitateur d'accès à l'information. Et c'est là où la pédagogie doit changer. Et c'est là où les nouvelles compétences arrivent. Donc les nouvelles compétences, c'est critical thinking, esprit critique. Je vois la vidéo, je regarde si elle est pertinente ou non, et si elle peut me servir ou non, et dans quelle mesure je peux l'utiliser. Une autre compétence qui voit le jour et qui est très importante, c'est le travail collaboratif. Je ne peux plus rien faire toute seule. Je suis dans le monde, je suis un citoyen de monde. Si je peux faire une compétence dans n'importe quel métier de la formation professionnelle ou autre, je suis obligée de collaborer avec d'autres. Et ça, c'est aussi une des compétences qu'on doit inculquer aux jeunes apprentis. Donc, en parlant de ça aussi, tout à l'heure, j'ai écouté avec beaucoup d'intérêt notre expert qui parlait de certification, mais je ne veux pas arriver à l'ubérisation de la certification, et je m'explique. Parce que la certification a mis le pas partout dans l'éducation, dans l'université, et puis les jeunes maintenant ne veulent plus avoir un diplôme, mais ils veulent collecter les certificats et vont mettre ça dans le CV. Les certificats ne se valent pas tous. Et si on arrive à ce niveau-là, on va ubériser l'éducation et ubériser également la formation professionnelle. Donc on doit trouver un équilibre, certes, entre une formation répondant aux besoins d'un pays et un certificat répondant aux besoins d'autres personnes qui sont à l'extérieur du pays plus que dans le pays. Donc c'est ça un équilibre à trouver et à le trouver en bon escient. Voilà, je pense qu'un autre élément qui est important et qui aussi fait partie des éléments des enseignants, et je vous donne la parole après, on a parlé du rôle de l'enseignant qui est devenu coach, mais vous avez vu que tous nos enfants maintenant sont en train de jouer. Pourquoi ils sont en train de jouer? Parce qu'il y a une valorisation. Vous passez d'un stade, ah c'est très bien, vous avez bien réussi et vous êtes passé. Donc c'est pour cela qu'ils jouent, parce que cette valorisation, ils ne la retrouvent pas ailleurs. Donc on peut aller aussi pour une formation professionnelle valorisante comme le gaming. Donc réfléchissons à une formation professionnelle comme un gaming et comme une valorisation de ce petit métier. Et je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. You sounded very passionate about the application. I was just wondering, though, what I particularly appreciated is that you also measure that they become entrepreneurs. Did I hear you correctly? Because it's not every young person that goes through our systems that is going to get that job, but it's how they can translate into self-employment. Do you just want to say a little bit more around how you determine which vocational skills are taught on this application? Do you do any needs assessments? Do you involve the private sector to determine which one should we really be putting out there? Just a few words.
C'est dans l'application Insert Jeune, enfin, je ne sais pas si vous, la plupart d'entre vous sont bilingues. Donc, dans l'application Insert Jeune, il y a ce qu'on appelle en langue française la carotte, c'est-à-dire qu'on demande à l'apprenant de dire, il est dans l'entreprise, quelles sont les compétences qu'il a acquises et qui lui a permis de travailler. Et le chef d'entreprise, il va dire la même chose, mais de l'autre côté. Par contre, si on leur met comme ça l'application, personne ne répond. Donc, dans Insert Jeune, on a mis en place un système où l'apprenant peut déposer son CV pour qu'il puisse être recruté et l'entreprise peut mettre ses offres d'emploi pour qu'elle ait accès à des apprentis. Donc, c'est comme ça qu'on a pu avoir les compétences des deux côtés. Après, il y a une liste de compétences par métier qui est liée à des curricula. Et sur cette base-là, il y a d'autres compétences qui ont vu le jour. Je ne dis pas que ce sont les compétences du XXIe siècle, mais disons que ce sont les compétences liées au numérique et qui sont vraiment bien demandées. Même si un tailleur maintenant, dans 2-3 ans, la machine qu'il utilise pour coudre sera une machine électronique. Donc le numérique sera omniprésent dans notre vie. Il est temps qu'on se prépare.
We'd like to move on to understanding the next level. Not all learners that go into the TVET institutions are as young as myself. Some of them, some of them are much older as they reskill and they're relearning. So please, from the Finnish experience, please tell us how the TVSD systems are providing learning continuity for practical skills acquisition and assessment during crises to build resilience. Do you need your presentation, sir?
No.
Or you'll just give us a...
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
So thank you, madam, and thank you that I have possibility to be here with you in this marvelous, beautiful country. I try to describe shortly how we do TVET in Finland and how we will do it in future. I want to highlight 5 points. First of all, the foundation of Finnish TVET, and also the secondly, implementation of our reform. Thirdly, working life cooperation, which one is very important. Fourthly, teachers' skills and competence. And finally, the Vision 2040 of Finnish education policy. When we talk about the foundation of Finnish TVET, at first I have to say it's based on law and qualifications. We have about 160 different qualifications, and there are 3 levels: basic levels, further levels, and specialist levels. And everybody must have opportunity to participate, and education is developed in partnership, especially with working life. But of course, student, teachers, parents, research, and so on. The aim of our system is to get the student employed and to get skilled workforce. But, however, everyone can continue their studies at universities or universities of applied science. Our education is free of charge, including 1 meal during the day and also possible student dormitory. Our system is based on trust and responsible of providers. Our providers are very independent. We have 140 providers in Finland. Our population is 5.5 million. And our funding comes mainly from Ministry of Education. And I will tell a little bit more about that. And when we talk about the implementation of our TVET reform, we have now one law, not different law for young people and adult people. We have one law, and we create a personal skill development plan for each student. So they are individual students, and that is very important. And the training providers is responsible for accepting previous competence. So student, if she or he has learned something before, we don't teach that anymore for them. And it doesn't matter where they have got these competencies. And also we have one demonstration-based way to get degree, and it primarily it happens at workplaces. So every student, they have to demonstrate their competencies, and it happens in working places. And there are two evaluators. There is a teacher and the representative of company. They are together doing it. We have ongoing all-year application. It's possible. Every student can, during the year, they can apply to our schools. We have two ways to do this working period. It's apprenticeship and then study agreements. And two ways. And what is very interesting, this our reform. So the finance system, 70% from finance, so the main finance comes from Ministry of Education, 70% of finance comes student amount, 20% decrease, and 10% when students get the job or go to further studies to universities or universities of applied science. And also plus feedback from students and feedback from companies. It has also influence for our resources. So we have one organization license what we get from Ministry of Education. And some words about the working life cooperation. Our education and developing, it's always made together with companies and employers. We can decide, providers, I mean all providers, VET providers in Finland, they can decide what qualifications and how many per year they will provide. And they do it together always with regional companies. And that is very important thing. And about half of our student studies happens inside companies. If it's apprenticeship, so it's more, about 80%. And this is also very important, I want to highlight. Our system is not based on time. It's based on competencies. So every student has their own individual pathways, and the time could be different. As I mentioned, degree is demonstration-based, and also the competence assessment is made by together teacher and the representative of company. So two people are doing that. Our providers, they might have also holistic partnership agreements with companies. So there are all services what providers can serve to companies. And what is also interesting, we have some providers use it. For example, we do it, custom competence evaluation of teachers' team by company leaders. So they are together, there are company leaders and there are teachers together, and they evaluate and assessment the custom competencies of teachers, these company leaders, face to face. It's very, very good way. And some words about the teacher skills and competence. We have I can say, highly educated teachers. The background is master or University of Applied Science. They have to have 3 years job experience and pedagogical education. And then they have right to evaluate the competencies. And of course, every year teacher has possibility to develop skills and competencies. And we also organize that our teachers develop their competencies in companies every year, some days, and provide a based salary for them, not company. In Finland, we have one very strong teachers union, and our teachers are better paid than average salary in Finland in normal case. They have about 1,500 working hours per year and 12 weeks holidays. And from this 1,500 working hours, about 400 working hours per year, teacher can decide where and when she or he is doing the job. Normally, in normal case, our jobs are permanent. And some words about the vision of 2040 of Finnish education policy. Training independent of time and place is carried out customer-oriented. Funding in future supports cooperation between upper secondary level and with universities. And also the funding takes in future into account the population based of the region and also accessibility of education. The vision is the population skill level and employment rate will rise. Everyone develops their skill during their working career in future. And what is good sentence? Competence renews working life and working life renews competence. This was my speech. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kavinen. For myself, I take away that learning continues. And if we could be afforded or have the appetite to take up this learning, and our TVDS systems be ready to also take on those that have progressed, to continue to add to our skills and absolutely to build the competencies. Thank you very much for that exciting presentation. Last but not least, I would like to welcome Mrs. Martha Muhezi. She's going to talk to us about good practices in the 3-year TVET program that they've undertaken in Mali and Zanzibar, responding really to some of the successes that they have experienced in terms of gender in TVET and TVSD. So thank you very much, ma'am. 3-5 minutes, and then we could take the audience to also engage with us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. When I come last, I either have too much time or I have no time. So I'll fall in between. Yeah, my name is Martha Muhezi, and I'm the Executive Director of FAWE, which is the Forum for African Women Educationalists. We are a Pan-African organization, and we are headquartered in Nairobi, Kenya, but we have presence in 33 countries across the African continent. Can you move to the next slide? Yeah, so that's just about FAWE. Like I mentioned, we focus on gender equity and equality in and through education. In all the work that we do, we work to ensure that there's no one is left behind, nobody is discriminated from the education system, and that each and every person is given an opportunity to pursue education, complete the education cycle, and also have access to quality education. In this particular sharing, next slide, please. Yeah, I just want to give a very brief introduction, particularly on the areas that we are focusing on today, the discussion we're having today. We focused basically on the out-of-school girls, because usually when we talk about TVET, we have many children that are out of school, and the majority of whom are girls. And there is usually a tendency to concentrate on the formal system and ignore those that are outside the school system. So from 2019 to 2021, we partnered with NORAD, and we had a co-creation within Zanzibar and Malawi. And in Malawi, we came up with a renewable energy program. And you'll agree with me that this is anything to do with the energy is male-dominated. But we ventured into it with the girls, and they proved that given the opportunity, they can also get into the male-dominated fields, and they can perform very well. And they were into renewable energy, and at the end of the 3 years, there are a number of achievements, just like I will point out towards the end. Then the next one was in Zanzibar, and Zanzibar is an island. There were a number of women that were involved in seaweed farming, and they were making products out of seaweed. But the challenge they were facing is they didn't have marketing for their products, and the quality of the products that were producing was very low. And because of that, they were not getting any income out of it, or very limited income out of it. So the desire by the community in Zanzibar was to add value to what they were producing and make it more, give them more skills to be able to make products that can be sold even beyond Zanzibar. And so we had to partner with the institutions in Zanzibar, and we picked on the Pemba Island and Unguja, and we worked with the TVET institutions right from the start of the project up to the end. And in these institutions, one of the things that we instituted was the gender perspective, the gender responsiveness, because in most of these institutions, the number of females was very, very small. So we had to work with the tutors, first of all, to train them on teaching from a gender perspective, to appreciate the challenges that the girls face, and also appreciate the challenges that the boys face, so that they're able to encourage and motivate them to get into school. So we got about 850, move to the next slide, please. We focused on 850 girls in total that were out of school, but they were in a way doing some work in making products out of seaweed. So as we got in, we had the theory of change. It's detailed, and in the interest of time, maybe I may not elaborate on it, but I'm sure the presentation shall be shared. But I just want to say that our goal at the end of it is we wanted a strong cadre of adolescent girls, women and youth with livelihood skills which are essential for the 21st century. And how we looked at this goal, then we had to look at the long-term outcomes, and also looked at the immediate outcomes, and then what inputs were required. We had to make critical assumptions, and then we put in place strategies that would enable us achieve the goals that we were focusing on. Next slide. So that was the major goal: economically empower girls, young girls, and women from very vulnerable backgrounds. That was the target, and we were to equip them with employable skills in trade, and also to improve their livelihoods and lift them out of poverty. And those were the objectives. There were basically 3 objectives that we focused on. One, we were looking at the vulnerable girls and giving them employable skills. And we're also looking at a framework of strengthening or building capacity of 850 adolescent girls and women, both in Mali and in Zanzibar. And then the third one was economically empowering the girls and women to improve on their livelihoods. Next, please. And in all this, it was 3 years program, and we made quite a number of achievements, but I'll just mention very few in the interest of time. And the very first one is that the vocational training institutions in Zanzibar were able to review their curriculum and include seaweed farming within the curriculum in all the institutions, the TVET institutions, which in Zanzibar. For us, that was a very, very key achievement. It went beyond the few girls and is now being replicated within the island. The other one is about community perception, changing perception, looking at it like TVET is for the men, but the girls proved that they can also be able to do it and do it very well at that. And in terms of the products, the seaweed farming was looked at not as a clean job, but at the end of it, because of the equipment that was provided, because the program also provided equipment, they were able to produce products that were now being sold and bought by many that thought would not buy them at the start. And out of the girls that were trained, it increased the self-employment. Many of them now were self-employed. And in seaweed in Zanzibar, there was 74%. And then the green energy in Mali, the increase in employment was to 36%. The other big achievement is the buying by government. And this was because right from the start, we worked very closely with the government. And once the government buys into any program, the chances of replication and scaling it up and sustainability increase. The other achievement was the girls now mobilized themselves into groups. And at the close of the project, there were about 16 groups, and many of them were trading together, sharing ideas. They had startup capital that was provided as part of the programming, and they formed groups, formed associations, registered them formally, and this helps them to market their products. And at the end of the program, UNESCO had already joined hands with FAWE in Zanzibar and Tanzania to support the program and also scale it beyond the number of girls that we were targeting. Next slide, please. Yeah, those are just case studies. I think I may not go through it, but I'll just summarize that in Mali, one of the girls had never been employed. By the moment she went through that training, she is now employed, and she's able to do installation of solar panels within the community. And this also changes the community perspective in terms of what girls can do and what the boys can do, what women can do, and what the men can also do. So they are now employed and contributing to family economy, but also to their own development. The next one, next slide, please. Yeah, this is just about the seaweed. That's just a picture in Zanzibar. The girls were trained also in terms of swimming. They're able to go to the deep waters and get the seaweed by themselves. They were given boats as part of the program. And this is one, if you visited Zanzibar, you'd see more than what I'm saying here. Yeah, the next one, I'm about to conclude with the lessons learned. The first one is about marketing. As we get into TVET, as we promote all this, there must be a linkage in terms of marketing, or else the products will be produced and then they will not be sold out, and which also becomes another challenge. So that's generally for TVET. As we give them the skills, as they get into production, particularly those that are in self-employment, there must be a link to the market. Then also it's important working within the existing structures. Like I mentioned, when you work within the existing structures, the success of the program and also the target population increases. Enhancement of the voice, agency, and sense of empowerment. This is a key propellant in transforming the TVET space. That is one of the achievements, because there was another program within the SEM, which is Tuseme, a Swahili word meaning speaking out, enabling the girls to advocate for their own rights. They also got empowered. And then there is making it happen, be practical. In other words, we have to change the perception. How do you change perception? Is by making it happen. Let the masses see what is on the ground, and that way the perceptions will change. The girls in the community are able to change perception, not because they're talking about it, but because the community is seeing what exactly they are doing, the skills they have got, and the change they are causing in the community. And the last one is management of socio-cultural factors. These are, for instance, the incubation in Bamako. The women, some of them would need permission from their husbands. Like Unami said, the age group is very varied. There are those that are 50, there are those that are 20, there are those that are 30. There are those that are married and there are those that are single. So the dynamics are very different. So one of the lessons is for them to be able to succeed, particularly for those that are married, you involve their husbands in the business, and that way they also get family support. If they are not supported at family level, the chances of them not completing the course are very high. I want to believe that's the last slide. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Martha. I loved that the young lady said work liberates. And that's the opportunity that we, through our work in TVSD, can give to every young person. I'm looking towards Helene, because our time, we should now be moving over to the next session, which will talk about financing. But perhaps there's a burning question on the floor, and I'm looking at my colleague who's keeping watch online. If there's a message here, just one burning question. No, I don't see anything on my side. So in the room, would there be a burning question? Yes, please, sir.
Okay. Merci beaucoup. Mon nom c'est Koufi Agossou, je suis le directeur de l'OIT pour Madagascar, Comores, Seychelles et Maurice. Je vous remercie pour les différentes présentations. Étant donné que nous n'avons pas beaucoup de temps, je vais juste poser une seule question. C'est par rapport au secteur informel. De toutes les discussions que vous avez menées, de toutes les interventions, je n'ai pas entendu comment vous attaquez la problématique de l'emploi informel ici en Afrique, étant donné que c'est ce secteur quand même qui emploie la plupart des jeunes, des femmes, des personnes en situation d'handicap et aussi les migrants. Donc, quelle est votre approche par rapport à ce secteur? Je vous informe qu'au niveau de l'OIT, évidemment, nous avons des outils pour pouvoir faciliter l'apprentissage informel vers le formel. Bref.
La question ne m'a pas été posée, mais c'était une autre question. Mais moi, je pense que c'est une réalité, et plus qu'une réalité en Afrique, dans tous les pays africains où il y a toutes les petites femmes qui vendent les cacahuètes un peu partout, les légumes et tout ça, et on n'a jamais tenu compte de ça. Enfin, nous, dans notre métier, on travaille sur la partie alphabétisation informelle. C'est-à-dire que ces femmes-là, elles savent calculer et tout ce reste, mais elles ne savent pas parler en français pour pouvoir aller plus loin. Donc notre métier, c'était surtout le français professionnel pour ces femmes-là. Mais il y a d'autres, vous avez mis en place un curricula, d'autres aussi ont mis en place des activités d'aide. Nous, comme on travaille sur le français, on a juste mis l'accent sur le français pour objectifs spécifiques dans le cadre de l'informel.
Merci. Je crois que j'ai un peu effleuré la question quand j'ai parlé de l'enquête que nous sommes en train de mener pour identifier les acteurs qui sont dans les secteurs informels, parce qu'en réalité, notre ministère s'occupe de ces trois types de fonctions, trois types d'activités, le secteur formel, le secteur informel et le secteur non formel. On est dans le 3. Et pour l'informel, on s'intéresse dans un premier temps à ceux qui ont une activité fixe, comme les mécaniciens par exemple, les tailleurs, on peut les identifier facilement, même s'ils ne sont pas encore répertoriés par l'État. On les identifie pour mieux les encadrer. Alors, il y a un type d'activité qui est un peu plus particulier, c'est la formation de type ambulatoire. Donc là, c'est une équipe de gens que nous mettons en place pour essayer de circuler d'un endroit à un autre. Lorsqu'on identifie un bassin d'activité mécanique ou autre chose, on vient, on assure la formation et on passe. On fait comme ça à tour de rôle. Mais il y a également, quand nous parlons d'activités ambulatoires, il y a également les formations en prison. En RDC, ça n'existe pas encore. Nous sommes en train de penser à cela, qu'au niveau de ceux qui sont internés dans l'environnement carcéral, voir comment, à la sortie, ils puissent mener une activité normale et éviter les activités répréhensibles. Ça, c'est également dans les programmes. Merci.
Colleagues, mine is to say thank you. I'm looking at my colleagues from Madeira. There's one burning question, but please allow me to pass on it because we do need to move on to another exciting. I have just one takeaway. We need TV, SD, not just for the young people that are coming out of secondary, but in the evolving economies, in the evolving world of work. My brother is a banker. Tomorrow he might not have a job because of AI. What new skills can he learn? Where is he going to learn them at the age of 43? What I'm simply saying here is, one, we need to be aware that the TVSD system is really about all of us having the skills to play an active role in the economy. Our focus right now may be on the young people, but let us really open up our systems to provide the skills for the jobs in the future. My second part is the world is our oyster. We have different contexts, but what we have taken away today is to think the future and keep it local. In some instances, it may be just giving the basics of a livelihood. In some instances, it may be progressing through continuous learning, positioning for the future of work, but whatever we do, to keep it local and to meet the needs of our changing economy, and skills that we can provide through our vocational systems are really going to be the ingredient to drive that economic growth. So I would like to now hand over to my colleague, Professor Afeti, who's going to take over the conversation around financing in TVET, with a big thank you and applause to our panelists and for their experiences. And I can assure you, the presentations that were shared today, and please, Ma'am, the tool that you spoke about, if you could share it together with our rapporteurs so that they will be shared together with the report later on. Thank you all for participating in this session.
Thank you, Unami.
Thank you, sir.
Let me now invite the panelists for the next session. Team, Melanie is here, and we have Huba is here as well. Yes, please. Oh, I am. Okay. Please take a seat. Yes. And then Professor Hunyunuga is here, okay.
You have
Please sit down.
George.
No, okay. just sit anyway. Just sit anyway so that we can just quickly, yeah.
Oh no, it took so long, so now we have to dance to get people awake.
Just play the tune.
Yeah.
Exactly. We need to.
Yeah, sure.
Let me go to the middle. Two ladies to the side, that's great. Hi, I'm Tim.
Nice to